Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Sustainable Scoop. Joining me today is Theo Stamos. She's Arlington and Falls Church's Commonwealth attorney. Welcome, Theo.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, the last time you came up in our show, you were running for office, and I was marveling about all the women in executive roles in Arlington County. And now you've served your last term. You're going to be running again, but can you tell me some recaps from your previous term, highlights?
Well, it's been an interesting and I think productive term for me and also my staff. You know, we work hard every day in all three courts: the juvenile domestic relations court, circuit court, our felony court, and our misdemeanor court. And some highlights have been really continuing to do the good work that our office does, which is, quite honestly, and it sounds perhaps, a little lofty, but the pursuit of justice is really what we're about. And as prosecutors are known, they're not just lawyers, they're ministers of justice. And we take that role to heart every day. So I'm proud of the work that we do, the way that we approach the idea of rough justice and what that looks like, resolving cases, taking into account victims of crime, the witnesses who appear, and of course the defendants who are charged with offenses. So we never lose sight of the humanity of all of those people. And at the end of the day, our only client is to do the right thing, and I'm proud of the work that we do.
And I remember I asked you a question about being in a role that's typically held by men as the DA around the country, and you had an interesting answer. Can you recap that for me?
I think at the time we talked about how, male or female is not so important as to competence and ability. And I have been in a male-dominated profession for many, many years. And quite honestly, I've never felt that being a woman was a disadvantage at all. I think that so long as you bring, a passion to the position, honesty, integrity, hard work, discipline, all the things that you learn about when you're playing on a sports team, I think you do well whether you're a man or a woman. And I'm happy to say that I have a good number of women in my office, and I'm proud of the hires that I've made.
Well, now, some of the challenges that you face, of course, male or female prosecutors have people come across in front of the bench, and they need to be held over sometimes. They need to make bond. It can be very difficult for them to make their way back into society when they've got all this debt that comes along with getting in trouble with the law. There's been some debate about that. How do you reconcile some of those issues?
It's a very big topic in criminal justice circles, the cash bail situation. I think viewers should know that the vast majority of individuals are released on personal recognizance or under a supervised release program. Very few individuals are regularly held, on a secured bond or on no bond. Those are reserved for the individuals who present a risk of flight or a danger to the community, which are two things that the Code of Virginia requires us to consider, and it requires a court to consider when determining whether someone should be held pretrial or not. So I think the idea of eliminating cash bail is something that I know the General Assembly is looking at. It's something that our office and my profession has been looking at. But if you're going to remove one of those tools, which a secured bond is, it has to be replaced with something, and that something needs to be more resources for pretrial release.
And actually, there is a good deal of investment in Arlington in rehabilitation, drug courts, and also programs for teens, so that they don't have a record per se.
Absolutely. There certainly are dispositions that are available by virtue of the Code of Virginia, but in my office we've also devised a number of dispositions that allow an individual to not have a criminal conviction even though they've been arrested and they're being prosecuted for an offense, to avoid that first conviction, to avoid that first felony conviction.
And another controversial issue in Virginia has to do with convicted felons being able to vote after they've served their term. Without getting in the weeds, what is your position on that?
My position was back when this initial issue arose back in 2016 and remains today. I'm fully supportive of the restoration of voting rights for felons. If the General Assembly or the electorate in Virginia decided tomorrow that what they wanted to do was to have automatic restoration or never have a loss of privilege to vote by virtue of a conviction, I'm fully supportive of that.
Well, now, the last question, of course, you have an opponent in this race, and she's a fellow Democrat. So it's a primary contest. Tell me, how is that?
Well, it is what democracy looks like. I have been so honored and fortunate to serve as the elected for the past 2 terms. I'm seeking a 3rd term, and I'm perfectly prepared to make the case to the electorate for why I am the person who should be retained in that position. I have a record that I'm proud of reforms and, giving voice to victims. But no one owns a position for very long, and I think that the electorate is owed the opportunity for me to make the case when I stand for election, and I'm happy to do it.
And the fact that you're out campaigning and meeting with voters, what are you hearing?
I get a lot of energy from door knocking. I mean, I'm not as young as I was the first time I ran, and I have 2 new hips, so that's good. But it's very reassuring to knock on someone's door and have them say, "Hey, you're doing a good job. We remember you knocking the last time, and good luck to you." And
or even I've got a few ideas.
And I've got a few questions,
Yeah.
and so it's actually wonderful. Retail politics at its best.
Okay, so Theo, if people want to volunteer for your campaign or learn more about you, how do they do that?
Go to my website, theostamos.com. My direct dial at work, which you probably can't, to call for about campaigning, don't call me at the courthouse. That wouldn't be appropriate. But you can call me if you have an issue about my office, how I do things. I'm happy to. I answer my own phone most of the time. The taxpayers pay my salary, so I'm very accessible, and I'm happy to answer questions that come my way.
Well, I want to thank you so much for representing Arlington County and running for office. I think that's just so admirable, and keep up the good work.
Well, thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Good luck in the race.
Thank you.
And I want to thank all of you for watching another edition of the Sustainable Scoop. I'm Miriam Gennari. Back to the news desk.